Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dustin Cormier, and this is How to Rock Astrology. Today, we are going to be going into episode 3 of our series, talking about the true story of the Nakshatra Gods. In our previous episode, we talked about two characters in particular. We talked about Jesta, the Nakshatra Jesta, and its deity Indra. And we also talked about the Naga, the deity of Ashlesha. Now today we're going to talk about the Nakshatras Bharani and Magha, and their presiding deities. This represents a new section in our story. We've come from the usurper of paradise, which is, of course, Indra. Now we are on the next section, talking about drugs and judges. And the first chapter is called The New Judge, referring to Yama, who is the new judge taking over for Varuna, as we know. When Indra assumed the throne of paradise, everyone quickly discovered that he was no Varuna. He lacked Varuna's power and the attributes that made Varuna the perfect, just leader. Indra could use his clouds to see far and wide, but simply could not match the all-pervasive vision of the omnipresent god of space. Other than Varuna, the only omnipresent god is Vishnu, the god of consciousness itself, the ultimate container of all reality, even space. Vishnu, however, is not directly involved in the affairs of the world, save on the occasion of unusual emergency, i.e., avatars, Krishna, Jesus, Rama, etc. The gods could not convince Vishnu to take Varuna's throne, but he did agree to grant one of the gods omnipresent vision equal to Varuna's. Most interestingly, Vishnu did not choose Indra as the recipient of this power. It simply was not possible to give Indra this power without destroying the person Indra fundamentally is, a very partial, biased man. It's very interesting. Indra sees things in terms of how it benefits or interferes with his own plans. Such a jealous person could not possibly possess impartial, all-inclusive vision. Instead, Vishnu chose Varuna's former aide and confidant, the god of discipline, Yama. Those who are into yoga know that Yama is one of the limbs of Ashtanga, Raja Yoga. Yama meaning control, and then Niyama meaning kind of its opposite. In most tales, this gift of omnipresent vision takes a personified form named Chitragupta, a being who witnesses and keeps meticulous account of everyone's deeds. So this is Vishnu giving impartial, all-inclusive vision to Yama. The gift of this omnipresent vision takes a personified form called Chitragupta, and this is a being who witnesses and keeps meticulous account of everyone's deeds. Sorry to repeat that, I just felt I should. Vishnu gave Yama Varuna's vision, as well as his nous, making him the new judge of gods and men alike. With omnipresent vision, Yama fully comprehends the intricacies of karma and morality, and performs the extremely difficult and weighty task of bestowing suffering and pleasures upon people as the just punishment or reward for their actions. Being able to bear such responsibility earns him the title of Varuna and reveals him to be a god of unmatched strength and tenacity. Untouched by partiality, he is never motivated by favoritism or prejudice. In all cases, Yama is dutiful, responsible, moral, and fair. Remember, this relates to Bharani, the nakshatra of this deity. Now, we've just finished the chapter on Yama. We are going to now look at the judge's court and attendants. It's the Pitri. Pitris are the deity, and the Pitris preside over the nakshatra Magha. Now, Yama judges the deeds of gods and men, but it is rare that he sees anyone from a subhuman or superhuman species. Those species are not designed to exercise much free will, and therefore they do not do much that Yama needs to judge. Species that are less evolved than humans generally lack the intellect to be able to make moral choices. Those more evolved than humans generally lack the opportunity to choose between right and wrong, since their lives are primarily smooth rides that seldom, if ever, face moments of critical choice. Humans, however, have enough intellect to make conscious choices, and they have almost constant exposure to opportunities in which they must exercise that ability. Human life is therefore a karma factory, as Vic has put it. The rightness or wrongness of each and every choice we make is a complex puzzle in and of itself. What then of evaluating all the choices that everyone makes throughout their entire lives? Even with the help of Chitragupta and omnipresent impartial vision and prudence, Yama still needs assistance in this monumental task. So, an entire class of supernatural beings, the Pitri, provide the bulk of this help for Yama. These deities task themselves with ushering deceased, disembodied minds out from their former body and life into the court of Yama through his corrective or augmentative preparatory regimens, and finally to their next destination as a physically incarnated being through the womb of Yama's primary nakshatra, Bharani. Bharani, for those of you might know, the symbol of Bharani is a vulva, is the birth canal of a woman. Now, the Pitris realm is a netherworld, subterranean, but above the nether paradise of the Naga. Naga are on the bottom, and then the Pitri are still a subterranean netherworld, but it's above the Naga. Yama establishes his court here in Magha, the seat of authority and power. Seated on that throne, Yama judges the beings brought before him by the Pitri. Pitris tend to represent ancestors in Vedic cosmology. Now, Yama's assistant, Chitragupta, the accountant of karma, acts like the lawyer in that court. After sentence is passed, the defendant is prepared for their next incarnation. The Pitri create 28 hells and heavens within their netherworld, mainly for the sake of that preparation, or to bestow some karmic rewards or punishments that are impossible to accommodate in the more tangible and real earthly realm. The Pitri wield the power of Yama, but prefer to do so in benevolent ways, helping beings get through the confusing interim between tangible incarnations. Deceased humans who resist the Pitri's efforts to bring them through Yama's court find that the Pitri become ferocious and monstrous, dragging them by force and without relent. Those who willingly accept the Pitri's guidance find them to be helpful and calming, often taking the forms of deceased friends and relatives we knew and trusted. Similarly, those who face fearsome sentences usually resist and find the Pitri ferocious and forceful, while those who receive rewarding sentences easily see the kind and helpful face of the Pitri. Their tendency to appear as deceased relatives is part of what earns them the name ancestors. That's what Pitri means. Another reason is that the Pitri were created by the first beings created by Brahma, the first embodied being, and thus the ultimate forefather. They were created for the sake of helping to populate Brahma's newly created world, and thus became ancestors of many races and species. Because they wield the power of Yama, the moral judge, and often take the form of ancestors, the Pitri inspire us to be careful about our actions, and especially to take careful heed of and not transgress cultural moral standards. Thus, they can be seen as a force inspiring traditionalism and conservatism. We often consider our Yama the foremost Pitri. This is an awarded position, not necessarily a matter of genealogy, because our Yama is a child of Aditi, and he's not a Pitri by birth. He's one of the Adityas, born of Aditi. So the reason our Yama becomes the master Pitri is by the similarity in their function. Our Yaman is the chief deity who enforces and empowers contracts, promises, and cultural traditions. The Pitri are also inspirations for fidelity to cultural tradition, and their ushering of beings from death to a new life can be seen as the unfolding of a promise. At death, when they take someone out from their old life, they make a promise. We will bring you through this, and you will be born anew. By passing through Yama's court, and finally bringing the being into a new womb, they do fulfill their promise. Very psychedelic. There's lots that I do think about these things, but I'm going to end our reading here today. In this episode, we heard about the Nakshatra Bharani and the Nakshatra Magha. Stay tuned for next week's episode, where we're going to talk about Vishaka and Mrigashirsha. Thanks for watching, folks. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. See you on the next episode.